15 minutes till we arrive at the dive site. The sound of a missing O-ring. Now, had I done a pre-build and dive check at home, I would have caught that before I'm sitting on the charter boat. Okay, I do know that I'm actually not sitting on a charter boat, but now I have to rely on the fact that did I bring my dive toolbox. In this episode, we talk all about building out an ultimate dive toolbox to make sure as a plan B that it's got you covered. I'm Diver Dave. I'm still in the dive lab, and you know, I've got coffee. Let's dive in. Welcome back to 613 Dive, and it looks like we are making another video here in the dive lab. And based on the intro, it looks like we're talking about the ultimate dive toolkit. The message is really going to be about being a prepared diver and how they make the best dive buddies. But being a prepared diver does not start once you get underwater. It actually starts well before. I just spent the last 3 weeks slowly building out that ultimate dive toolkit behind me, and we're going to talk about why every new diver needs to think about building out their own dive toolkit, plus the one key habit that every diver needs to embrace before they even leave the house. Let's get into it. Catching problems before they happen. And this really comes back to the philosophy of the pre-build and the pre-test. I know if I have an early morning charter dive tomorrow, then I'm going to pre-build and pre-test my dive kit tonight just to ensure that there are no issues. And if there are issues, I can resolve them here. Can we take a sec to pause and have a moment of silence for this SPG? I'm going to miss this SPG. It's a nice SPG. But it was discovered here last season in the dive lab on a pre-build and dive check before my dive day started. Then having to resolve them on site. That way I can wake up tomorrow morning, I can grab my coffee, I can load up the dive truck, and I know that the dive kit that's leaving the door has a high level of confidence that it is going to work. And I know what you're going to say, Dave, I did the pre-build, I did the pre-test, I have all this confidence it's going to work, then why the hell do I need a toolbox? And I'm going to tell you, well, things still happen. The dive toolbox is now plan B, or the safety net. Because let's think about it, O-rings can degrade, hoses can split under pressure, mast straps and fin straps break all the damn time. And so the dive toolbox is really that safety net to sort of protect you from all of the what ifs. This makes you self-reliant, it makes you a prepared diver, it allows you to build up buddy trust, and it makes you a really good buddy. Oh, looks like the toolbox has arrived. There it is, the beginning of the dive toolbox video. If your dive toolbox looks like something that belongs on a rental site versus a dive site, then it's probably too big. There is no charter captain that is going to allow this monstrosity onto their dive boat. So it might be time to rethink the approach. Okay, now that we got rid of the big ass toolbox, now we're talking about the 613 dive toolbox, and it itself is actually quite big, and on some dives it is a bit of a pain. But for me, I have to not only account for the fact that I'm a diver, I was also a dive master, and now of course I'm an instructor. So I always have to be even triple prepared just in case one of the students forgets something. So you could make the argument that even this is probably slightly too big for the average diver. But what I do like about it is it's got multi-compartments. It has a really nice, quick, easy access top with a bunch of smaller compartments up top just for the stuff that I need to get to quickly. And then if I really need to get inside and access some of the bigger stuff, the tools, the hoses, all of that is in there. So overall, I like the toolbox. It always sits in my dive truck. It has saved many dives. So for me, it's a keeper. But we're going to talk about the one that we just bought that is going to be the best fit for new divers. We are back with the right size toolbox for the new diver. It's small enough that I can easily take it with me on every dive, shore dives, or fits nicely underneath the bench on a charter boat. But it actually has enough room for it to hold a bunch of dive gear that I might need for the safety net. I have quick containers up top in case I need to access things quickly. And then of course, if I wanted to access things inside, I have a nice tool tray. And then I've got a fair bit of storage room inside to hold all of the essentials, things like hoses, regs, compasses, you name it. So really, the ultimate dive toolbox in terms of the toolbox itself has to meet two things. It has to be able to hold some essentials, but just as important, has to be small enough so that it's easy for me to take on every dive. Because we know what Murphy says, the minute I don't take this is the minute that I'm going to need it. We are down to our final toolbox option. It's not even a toolbox. But I know there's going to be some folks watching this and go, Dave, I am not investing in all that toolbox, because not only do I have to invest in the toolbox, I got to spend money to fill the damn thing. So if I wanted to battle Murphy on every dive day, what is the minimal thing that I need to take with me? And if that's the case, I'm going to say, well, then you really just need to take a basic Save the Dive kit. So what does that even look like? Head on down to your local dive shop. Every one of them should have it. And if you take a look at this, this is a Save the Dive kit. It has a wide range of O-rings to use on yoke or din valves. It has a nice little O-ring pick for you to take the O-rings out. And then it has a nice little container that you can actually just put on your keychain. And so at a minimum, you at least have the ability to swap out your O-rings in the case that you had an issue. Before we close out the toolbox section, I wanted to touch on one last point, and that is waterproof toolboxes. We had a couple of great comments in the Facebook group, and by the way, thank you to everyone who took the time. There were some really good responses there, much appreciated. But waterproof toolboxes is something that I did not invest in early on in my career. The Dive Toolbox that I showed you just outside on the video has been with me for 5 years. I've never had an issue with it, but it only houses my tools and any sort of spare dive equipment in case I have some sort of dive issue that I need to fix. But for all of the dive gear that I take with me that I will need for a dive, I actually put it all into a waterproof toolbox. And I have an example here. It is the Nanook 918, and you can see it has a lot of storage, it's super rugged, and it goes with me on every dive day. So all of my dive gear basically goes from that wall that you can see behind me into that dive tool case. So that way I know that before I leave, if the wall is empty, everything's in the case, and I take the case with me, then I know that I have everything I need to start my dive day. And hopefully that means 613 Dive 1, Murphy 0. Up next, we're going to take that toolbox and head back to the bench to see what's inside. I've done my best to build it in terms of based on my own experiences and of course some of the awesome feedback in our Facebook group. So thanks again for that. But let's be honest, there's no doubt that I have missed some stuff. But that's not really the point. The intent here is just to sort of bring awareness of why the Dive Toolbox is important, and just as important, that it should continue to grow as your dive journey grows. So to new divers, really the expectation here is don't feel like you have to have a fully stocked dive box on day one. Like I said, it's probably going to grow with you as your dive journey grows. But let's go take a look. All right, we are back on the dive bench with our Dive Toolbox, and let's do a top-down view. On the left side, we've got a 500 PSI mask defog, of course, super handy. We've also got the 500 PSI mask scrub, great for new masks. We have an assortment of sort of breakaway clips that are really, really handy to have. An assortment of O-rings, and also a high pressure and a low pressure plug for your first stage. And then of course the super handy din to yoke adapter. In the middle compartment, we have a spare double ender, always super handy to have because we seem to lose a lot of these. And then a couple of dive right clips, which are also extremely handy. Let's take a look to see what we've got on the top right side. Right off the bat, a handy pair of nail clippers. Looks like a spare octo holder because we always seem to lose those. We've got an assortment of AAA, AA, and of course the special battery that the shearwater transmitters need. And that sums up the top. Okay, let's take a look at the tool tray. Right off the bat, it looks like we've got a spare mast strap. That's kind of nice from Fourth Element. We've got a pretty handy little headlight, so in case you're working on your dive kit in the dark on a night dive. Looks like we got a brand new toothbrush for some dive kit cleaning. Always recommended to have a bottle of aspirin handy in the dive toolbox, just in case. This was a really good recommendation online to have some hand sanitizer in there, so here we go. Of course, we have some silicone grease. We have a spare mouthpiece with the cable tie. We have a valve tool. Some spare bungee. Always need spare bungee. No dive toolkit is a dive toolkit without a black Sharpie. Also, a really good suggestion online was a granola bar. So here we go. And last but not least, we have a rubber band, which I guess we could use as a hairband. But what the hell do I know about hairbands? And that's it for the tool tray. Okay, now let's take a look in the bottom storage compartment and see what the setup would be for a new diver. And we're hoping that there's going to be room in the toolbox to grow. So, always handy to have some band-aids in the dive toolbox. We have an X-Acto blade. We have a lighter. Of course, cable ties. We have a pair of high-strength reading glasses. Be careful with these because they might start forest fires if you're not careful. We have a Schrader tool, handy to work on BCD and dry suit hoses. Of course, black electrical tape. We have a dive multi-tool. A spare compass is always handy to have. This was a good mention from online. Wet wipes. A pair of needle nose pliers, which are curved. We have a yoke to din adapter. We have an Allen key multi-tool. We have a multi-bit screwdriver. A nice set of flush cutters. A small little dental pick set. An adjustable wrench. And last but not least, a pair of cutting scissors. So there we have it. As a new diver, that would be what I would put into my dive toolbox. Now that my toolbox has room to grow, I am also growing as a diver. I just took my Enriched Air Diver course, and so now I'm an Enriched Air Diver. Well, that probably means I should have green tape to mark my tanks. How about investing in a nitrox analyzer? Because this, for me, was a great investment back in the day. I already have the black Sharpie, so we know we're covered there. And then how about I throw in a spare SPG, just to handle the what-ifs on the high-pressure side? How about a spare BCD hose, or even a spare regulator hose? I have seen those break in my time. And last but not least, if I really wanted to save the dive and my main dive computer breaks, well, maybe I pick up a used, cheaper dive computer, just so that I can save my dive. Now, when I look at this kit, this is a very functional save the dive kit in terms of building out the ultimate dive toolbox. Time to put it all back together. Toolbox complete. Of course, we can't forget the dog treats. Now we gotta find a place to fit them. And now Mr. Finn is happy. Well, we are almost at the end of the Ultimate Dive Toolbox video. But I wanted to add in just a couple more things that I forgot to put in on the bench. So the first item would be a pair of fin straps. Super critical to have in your dive toolbox. And if you're a dive master or an instructor, then I would recommend having a spare reg and also a spare first stage, because you just don't know. And if you're on a course with a student and one of those breaks, then you have a way of fixing it in a timely way. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting you go out and buy all of this sort of stuff new. It's expensive just to sit in your toolbox. But there are creative ways. Use sales, Facebook Marketplace, dive shops that have consignment sales. In fact, Canada Diving Supply has a massive used sale coming up end of April. I would suggest you check it out. Hopefully I get there before you do. But that's a great way to find used gear at affordable prices so that you can start to build up your dive toolbox. Final thoughts on the Ultimate Dive Toolbox. And like I said earlier, this is not meant to be an exact recipe, but more about a video to spread the awareness of why a dive toolbox is important. Number 2, always take the opportunity to pre-build and dive check your dive gear before it leaves your house. This should catch about 95% of the problems, and we hope the remaining 5% can be caught by our safety net, the Ultimate Dive Toolbox. Having a dive toolbox means you are a prepared diver. It means more fun, it means more diving, it means more trust, which must mean you are a good buddy. And now I challenge you to tell me what's in your dive toolbox. And as always, if this video has delivered, then I would encourage you to hit the like, put a few comments, and of course, hit the subscribe button. It's how the 613 Dive channel is going to continue to grow. And last but not least, practice hard, dive safe. And the fact that buddies make the best preparedness, because that is no sense. I just spent the last 3 weeks scratching my eyeball. If your dive toolbox looks like something that belongs on a rental site versus a dive site, look, I'm still itching from the O2 video. Spare pair of fin straps, spare pair of fin straps. We'll take a bit of water. It's just now you're going off on a tangent and you can't pull it back in time. Don't go there. Stick to the plan. Come on, let's go. Let's go. We're almost there. As well of a ton of storage areas inside. As well of a. What is as well of a? That's a new word. As well of a. We're making it up now.